wanted to clarify, does everybody know the difference between traditional surrogacy and gestational surrogacy? For traditional surrogacy, the carrier is also the genetic parent of the child as well. So it's an incredible journey. I'm going to open the floor to questions, but something, Jessica, that you said. My carrier was also in the Bible Belt. She was in Southern Virginia, and she had a real fear of explaining this process to her family and her friends, particularly that she was having a child for a gay couple. And what I think she and her husband came to was she was telling only a very, very close circle of friends and family the truth, but the rest of the people she was explaining that she was helping a family that couldn't have children have children. So I was curious as to, and Lisa, you spoke about the support that you had, but Jessica, being from Tennessee,
yes,
what that experience was like for you.
Actually, I did a lot of the same thing. I would explain to some people exactly what I was doing, and questions got old fast, so you get your stock answers quickly. Other people, I'm also a high school teacher. I'm a high school ESL teacher, so you get a lot of questions. And so what I would say is the parents, and that seemed to work very well for most people, the parents. But I did lose some friends that, rightly so, should have been lost. But that's okay. And then I found out it's amazing when you open this up to some people you lose, but some people, they say, oh, well, my cousin, oh, well, my brother. Things you never knew about people for 15 years. And you're like, oh, you have this connection you didn't know you had. And in the Bible Belt, your connections were like under the table.
Almost every person who came into the hospital room, like nurse, the woman taking photos, like it's a suburban hospital in Nashville. Everyone was like, oh, my son, he just went away to school up north. Just go. I also, on one of the visits, I went down alone for one of the visits for one of the appointments, and I remember we went out to breakfast. Oh, maybe it was with Alice. I can't remember, but we went out to breakfast after the visit, and the waitress. I mean, I'm from New York, right? Like, if you get a waitress to pay attention to you, it's a good thing. And here was, at an IHOP
you can't get them to go away. They want to tell you their whole life story.
And wanting to know your whole life story. And it was a really incredible moment of clarity for me of what we were asking Jessica to do and what she was doing on our behalf. Because to watch her handle that and know that she was handling that hourly, not daily, hourly, in an incredibly friendly, warm Bible Belt city. It was really impressive.
Lisa, did you have any, how old is your child?
My son is 6.5.
And did you have any issues explaining the process to him?
Oh no, he understands extremely well what goes on. I'm a biologist. I am graduating this December with my PhD in biology from Penn State University. So he knows everything that's going on. And we were recently at the zoo member night, and we had some really great experiences with him telling other kids what the boy lion was doing to the girl lion. In perfect detail.
That's great. I want to, if you guys get cold feet or it gets quiet, I have some questions that I'm going to ask, but I want to open it up. I know that there's going to be some hands. If you could just stand up and speak loudly, please.
You had mentioned, Jessica, about the hospital wanting to band you to the baby.
Yes.
How did you handle that situation?
We always deferred back to contract.
Actually, no.
Oh, no,
Can I step there? This is actually...
Mike, yes.
This is actually something that I wanted to say, which is...
This is something I wanted to say.
It sounds so much better than that.
The world is still learning. And in some ways you have to be patient with the world, and in some ways you're going to get annoyed with the world, but it's still learning. Our experience at Baptist Hospital in Nashville is Baptist Hospital is a Catholic hospital. And we were very concerned about that, and as Jessica said, we had actually had a great experience there. Very kind, every interaction, similarly every interaction with the nurse, you know, anyone who came in sort of like gave us a wink and said, I believe in what you're doing, which was lovely. A couple of issues came up about banding the baby. What they wanted to do was give one of the dads a band, the baby a band, and Jessica a band. And for them, it has to do with security, getting in and out of these secured floors.
Do you know about the bands?
Okay, so you're issued bands upon the birth of a baby. Immediately upon birth of a baby, they cuff that baby while while the baby's in sight, and then they give the parents bands also, and it allows you to get into the nursery. It has to do also with milk exchange. So if Jessica actually, and this is something just to complete her resume of being an amazing human being, Jessica pumped for both of us. She pumped for 3 months for us, and it lasted for 6 months. Like honey. It's a miracle. But the hospital, you know, we were not comfortable with that. Jessica was not comfortable with that. When they said, well, we want to give Jessica a band. Jessica didn't want to visit the nursery, and Matthew and I did, and Asa had no opinion at the time. But what they ended up doing was they ended up calling the hospital ethicist came down to talk to all of us, and you know, heard the situation. It turns out it's because these bands come in, it's like Avery labels, they come in threes. There's no ethical anything. It's like, this is how they come. We have 3 of them. If we had 4 of them, you know, it wouldn't be a problem. But while we were there, they like took out the book of ethics, and they changed their policy, which is that if there are two dads, the dads get the band, assuming that it's okay with the delivering mother. So inroads are made. I mean, it's kind of amazing in this day and age. You actually can see whether it's with your grandmother or whether it's with the Baptist Hospital in Nashville, or whether it's with the state of Tennessee. We had some major legal issues getting Jessica's name off the birth certificate and the way that we wanted it, because there's one obstructionist person in Tennessee government.
And Asa was born in 2011, and Flora was born in 2009, and we had no problems in the same jurisdiction. So the other thing is that things are changing, and they're not linear. We like to hope that things are always moving in the right direction, but we were there first and had no problem, and they came after us and had a problem. So you don't know. And from the time you sign your contract, and from things are changing, and you have to keep aware of that.
Also, one thing that helped us is the doctor that we chose. I specifically asked my gynecologist, I need a particular OB who will fight for us. And she directed me to our amazing, and she's a friend of ours now, our amazing OB, who is a lesbian, but a very quiet lesbian. So, it's known, but it's not spoken. But because of our situation, she fought for us, and she made sure everyone treated us with the utmost respect, and made sure everything was done to the letter, to the contract, and it was just an amazing experience. But you have, like Art said, you have to surround yourself with these type of people, and you have to choose wisely.
You have another question? Yes.
This is actually a question for Lisa. You know, we hear for people using gestational carriers, the whole, setup of the agencies that can help you and professionals. How did you go about in the traditional surrogacy situation, figuring out all the legal stuff or everything else?
It took a lot more energy on both. Oh, sure. So if you do go independent, how do you go about going independent? And the first thing is you know that you're signing up for about 10 times more work. It takes more energy, it takes more diligence. It takes a lot more connections. You have to be able to, or the agencies have a list of lawyers they can refer you to, or are on staff and everything else. You have to be able to find on your own, well, who's going to be a good lawyer? Where is a good lawyer in the area that we need them to be, like Ohio? And who's going to be another good lawyer back in New York for the adoption? And how do we do this? And and. So you definitely know that you're signing up for a lot more energy. You also have to make sure that there is more trust, because you know, there's not that inbuilt mediator that a really good agency can provide. And I have a lot of friends who are surrogates who have had problems, and the agencies have been great mediators between parents and surrogates. You have to be able to talk things out one-on-one, or through another mediator, through mutual friends, something like that. You need to be able to build your support system in other ways if you don't have that support of an agency staff. It can be done. I'm not the only person that's gone independent for surrogacy, obviously. It does take more energy, it does take more time, more commitment, more connections. I would never have gone independent for my first surrogacy. There's no way. I was too naive at the time. There was too much that I didn't know. Having that agency the first time helped me learn what I didn't know, helped me see what all I needed to learn, and definitely helped set me up for success and being able to do an independent surrogacy the second time. So you just have to be honest with yourself and weigh the pros and cons for you and your partner, if there's a partner involved, about how much time and energy are we going to put into this, how do we expect to go about this, do we have the resources and connections to be able to do this on our own, or do we need that backup safety net of an agency?
Yes, please.
Yeah, Jessica, could you say a little bit about the discussions you had with your husband about this?
Okay.
Did everybody hear the question? About basically asking what Jessica's discussions were with her husband for this process.
My husband knows me, so he knows when I get an idea, he either has to temper me down or he says, fly, go with it. And he knew that I was serious. So he said, I'll support you. And he did. And he's an amazing man.
You know, one thing that when you're working with a surrogate, you're working with her whole family. So we were really lucky that Eric and Caleb are the family, because they're amazing men who I think not only supported Jessica, which is their most important role, but were so warm and welcoming and trusting and fun toward, you know, and loving towards us. So.
Anybody? Okay. One of the issues that I had with our carrier was she was so far away from us. She was 8-hour drive away from us. And I really, really missed that experience of going through the pregnancy. And I was wondering how you guys dealt with that aspect with Jessica being in Tennessee.
You know, it was a 15-hour drive. It's an hour and a half flight. And when we started the process, we had said we wanted somebody within a day's drive. And we were very set on that, and this whole idea that we would never be able to fly with a newborn, and it goes out the window. Like, you start prioritizing things, and you're like, okay, that one doesn't matter. And so we, you know, and part of the sort of dating is like, okay, does she get us and do we get her, and are we going to be okay? And like, we're not the kind of people who drop everything at the minute and go. We just aren't. We're planners, and we have multiple obligations and this and that. And from like day one, it was really clear to Jessica, like, or she was really clear with us, like, I got this. Come when you can. Come when you need to. What do you want me to share with you? How can we be in contact? How can we make it work? And so it was weekly phone calls or more at times, and emails. And I mean, one of the most incredible things was Jessica said, you know, the doctor said that the baby can hear now. Do you want to send something and I'll play it? I won't listen to it. So I was like, you can listen to it. It's like, whatever. I'm totally embarrassed. But it was that, so you find ways to make it work. We went down once together, I think for the 20-week, because which is when we didn't make it for the heartbeat. So you'll get this, right? Like there's the 8 to 12 week or something heartbeat, and then at 20 weeks is when you generally can find out sex. And we were like, we know how many, how many cells we implanted. Like we're gonna know sex ahead of time. It was not a question to us, and we wanted to know. And so we went down for that one together, and then I think I went down about a month or two later. And we actually had planned another one, and then our daughter came 3 weeks early. So that wound up being that one. But it was really about knowing that we were with a surrogate who felt really comfortable being independent, and some won't, and that's okay. Again, it's just making sure you're on the same page in that regard.
But I couldn't have handled had they smothered me. I couldn't do that. I couldn't have, and honestly, I don't know that I could have parents in Nashville who are always knocking on my door and always wanting to see me, because this is just one facet of who I am. And while I'm pregnant, I have other things going on. So I can't be yours for a year. I can't be partially yours. But we also stayed in touch. We would get the printout of the sonograms, and I would mail those, but I would also take a picture with my phone and send it right away, or I think we listened to the heartbeat, cell phone.
Yeah, Jessica would call us during her ultrasound so that we were sort of virtually there and could hear the sonographer, and Jessica would sort of narrate what was going on. And like she says, she would take pictures of the screen so that we could see it in real time. And I think that kind of open communication gets you closer than you necessarily anticipate. I think it's a little bit of Dad's, speaking to the men in the room, I think it's a little bit of Dad's lot in life, no matter where your baby is being gestated. I think even if the woman who's carrying your baby is sleeping next to you, there's a certain wow, what's going on in there? I'm all the way over here on the other side of the bed. What's it like? There's by definition a little bit of a distance. And so similarly, you sort of bridge the distance and say, what is it? You're going to learn more about obstetrics and gynecology and female anatomy than you ever thought.
He was telling me about my body, things that I didn't know.
And that's part of how I stayed involved. Know what's going on a cellular level, and ask, and we got to a point where we were so comfortable with each other that Jessica would say what was going on with her body. It was everything.
What your kid made me do.
Yes.
This may be a delicate question at this stage of the process, but how did the money process work? And as you were developing this very important and involving relationship with her, where
it was very antiseptic.
And the question was how did the money aspect of it work, sort of in tandem with the emotional aspect of it?
We actually kept that part separate, which is why we went through Melissa Brisman's office. So if I had questions about money, I would go there. And if he needed to deposit more money,
an escrow account. An escrow account is set up, and you as the intended parents keep that funded, and Virginia Walker, who's back there, kind of keeps you up to date and tells you what's going on in your balance and what's needed. And so you never really have a conversation about.
And it's nice to not have that conversation.
Smart.
Yes.
Because it keeps it.
You do have to, like I said, you have to be comfortable talking about money if you're going to go independent. You have to be able to, be on the phone and, oh yeah, another bill came today. Do you want me to send it to you, or what do you want me to do with this? Okay, that works. And
is that how you handled it, Lisa? Is basically giving them the bills as they came in?
Yeah, and that was part of the trust. I have to be able to trust that they're going to pay these bills that they said they were, and I totally did with second, because they had given me no reason not to. They were there for probably 4, maybe 5 of the, mine was with a midwife kind of gal, but they were there for 5 of the appointments. And if they weren't there in person, they were on the phone, on the speakerphone, so that they could ask the midwife, what's going on, what do you think about this, how do you feel about whatever. And if there was anything that was needed brought up with the secretary, they were asking the secretary, oh, we got this bill and we weren't sure about this line item here. So could you explain that to us? But it's doable. I mean, it's just conversations that you have to have with people that you trust in.
I have a question for you, Lisa, as an egg donor. You had briefly touched on the medical aspect of egg donation that you didn't like. And I want you guys to understand from the egg donor's point of view what they actually have to go through medically to be able to be an egg donor. Could you just walk us through the injection process and the hormone process so that we kind of get an idea of what that is?
Oh, the egg donations were easy. The egg donations are a cakewalk because they're a maximum of 6 weeks that you're doing injectable medication. For egg donation and gestational surrogacy, there's going to be injectable meds involved. With the protocol that I used for my egg donation, it was follow-stim and HCG, and that's it. Really small needles, not that big a deal. There's a lot of ultrasounds involved, but that's, you know, you're not shoving giant needles into yourself constantly. With the gestational carrier, you're dealing with, depending on protocol, obviously, because different IVF clinics will use different protocols, but we were using around birth control pills and then Lupron and then estrogen and progesterone, and I think there was something else. There was, all around the time of transfer, there was also antibiotics for us. And that went to 12 weeks. So 6 weeks for egg donation, 12 weeks for gestational carrier. I was much happier with the 6 weeks. And none of the progesterone and oil, which if for gestation, yeah, progesterone and oil I think is the double.
Yeah. You have to give yourself small shots in the stomach. You grab a bunch of fat and you, with a very small needle. But the one in the oil goes butt cheek, and the needle is humongous, and it's frightening. And we had to, my husband he had to do it, and sweaty palms, he couldn't do it. We had to go next door to the nurse, to our neighbor, and lean over her couch. And he had to see this done for a couple of days before he worked up the nerve to injure me, but he did.
And what does he do for living?
He's a cop.
Very sensitive stuff.
I wanted to do the IM shots, but I wouldn't let him.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just one other quick question. Lisa, you in particular had mentioned that you'd had an easy first pregnancy, but pregnancy is also a invasive and potentially risky and dangerous thing, and I'm just curious for both of you, how did you think about physical risk when you thought about becoming a surrogate?
The question is how Jessica and Lisa thought through the process of the physical risks of pregnancy.
I guess I really didn't think all that much about it. You know, Pioneer women have 19 children. And I thought, well, I can do another one or two. And I didn't give that much thought to it. I mean, I did pay attention to my body, but there were never any warning signs, so I didn't really.
The same for me. Really easy pregnancy with my son. It was, especially in the first half, there were times it was like, oh, I'm pregnant? Oh yeah, I have to remember that. You didn't have the soft cheese. And I mentioned that I'm a midwife type of gal. With my son, I had a midwife who was extremely supportive and was very, your body has evolved over millions of years to do this and to do this well and to do this effectively. Trust in yourself, trust in your body, and you can do it. And that kind of became my philosophy.
And there's quite a bit of medical screening that they have to undergo before they're approved as
There's actually one thing sort of along that line, because it came up for us, was selective reduction, the term that we talked about. In our case, we wound up only having 4 embryos, and our clinic suggested and recommended that we do a 4 embryo transfer. And you know, they go through the odds, and it's, you know, it's odds of like how many we'll take. But we had a very clear plan in place. We are all thrilled that we have 1 daughter. But knowing that and being able to have that conversation ahead of time, because it allowed for a conversation about what is this going to do to my body, what are my fears, to really be part of that conversation. And again, it's one of the things you talk about ahead of time that helps.
You had mentioned, both of you guys had mentioned the importance of the hospital dry run, which I think is also one of the most important things as well, because you are going to see if there are roadblocks or if there are advocates there. And the advocates, and the education process that you may have to go through as the intended parents and as the carrier to sort of help them come along. And I was wondering if you could just elaborate briefly about that process of going to the hospital. You had mentioned something about meeting the bureaucrat. To go into that in a little bit more detail, if you have any thoughts.
Sure. So I went down, and we had scheduled it because the hospital we delivered in, the doctor's office was like in a building attached to the hospital, and we had an OB appointment that morning, which ran late, and so we missed the like intended parents tour of the maternity ward thing. So we were like trying to snag an extra little look or whatever, and that was fine. But in the process, met with, I want to say the administrator, but maybe it was a social worker. It was a caseworker who essentially, what she had done and what the hospital had done before were adoptions, were women having their biological babies and then relinquishing their rights. And she wanted us to go through that process. The problem being that we had done a pre-birth order in Tennessee in front of a judge and had a pre-birth order that essentially was an order for a hospital to treat us as the parents, as the legal parents, and not Jessica. And I will tell you that this was probably more important to Jessica than it was to us. And it was important to us, but she, every step of the way, was, I don't want to make decisions. I don't want that, like, I don't want to be put in that position. And so it was very important for us to clarify with this person that we weren't going to do it that way. And the pushback we really got was pretty bureaucratic. I mean, I don't think it was in any way homophobic or about the